Antisemitism and Antizionism are the most brutal crimes of mankind, by Dr. A. Ahmed. Among all those evil crimes and atrocities committed by mankind against black Africans, Native Americans, Aborigines of Australia, Muslim women by Muslim men, the untouchables in India, non-Muslim by Muslim mujahideen during the bloody Islamic invasions, and the Jewish of Europe. The anti-Semite wave is the only one that lasted for over 2,000 years and continues to our present time. The perpetrators believe that it is their God-granted right and the law of their religion and country to hate and persecute the Jews. We have seen how God punished the Arabian nations which persecuted the Jews. He punished them through the bubonic plague or Black Days, the 30-year war of religions between Catholics and Protestants, and the wars of the tyrants of modern history, such as Napoleon Bonaparte, Benito Mussolini, Adolf Hitler, and Joseph Stalin. In the two World Wars, over 75 million people were killed. 1/4 of the population of Europe perished through the bubonic plague. Muslims have killed 60 million Christians in Asia, North Africa, and Europe, and possessed their lands until today. The Muslim Turks occupied many Arabian lands and almost destroyed half of Europe during their 5th-century reign of terror of continuous attempts to Islamize Europe. Many people may not see the causes of those atrocities and calamities as direct results of anti-Semitism, but a careful study of the history of the Jews in the Old Testament can confirm it. The Bible has plainly stated it. And whatever nation to which they will be in bondage, I myself will judge, said God. And after that, they will come out and save me in this place. The Acts of the Apostles, chapter 7, verse 7. The Arabs and Muslims also consider anti-Semitism a divine right granted to them by their God Allah. They too began to feel the scourge of God in their lands and by their people. I strongly believe that the many terrorist groups such as ISIS, Hamas, Al-Qaeda, Taliban, Boko Haram, Janjaweed, and Shabab of Somalia are the scourge of God, and other terrorist leaders like those of Iran's are the Attila, the Han of today. It all started through the cold Arab Spring. Today, Muslims are fighting and killing Muslims all over the Middle East and African and Asian countries in Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, Egypt, Libya, Tunisia, Yemen, Saudi Arabia, and Sudan. Similarly, Muslims are engaged in constant warfare against each other and non-Muslims in Israel, the Gaza Strip and West Bank, Nigeria, Somalia, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Kashmir in India, and plotting terrorist attacks in Europe, Africa, Asia, Australia, and the two American continents. They are going down the same road that the Arabians had gone before them because of their persecution of the Jews. Millions upon millions are going to lose their lives through those wars on terror. For a long time, only America stood with Israel, and for that reason, it has become the greatest nation in human history and blessed abundantly by God. Unfortunately, the former American President Barack Hussein Obama, who is a wolf in sheep's clothing, has tried to turn America against Israel. His foreign policy and attitudes toward Israel are creating a nuclear capable Iran. But after a few years in office by a Muslim sympathizer, God is not going to forget what America had done for Israel. God bless America and bless Israel and punish their enemies. Amen. Under the current American administration, anti-Semitism is practiced openly in American colleges, but cloaked as anti-Zionism. Anti-Semitism is illegal, but Antizionism is allowed. What kind of hypocrisy gives rise to this double standard? Here is a quote from a documentary video posted in YouTube under the title, "The New Face of Anti-Semitism on Campus." Israel is under assault in North American college campuses today like never before. Anti-Israel activities to alienate, demonize, and delegitimize Israel are increasingly crossing the line into anti-Semitism in the form of hate speech, harassment, and intimidation. Canada supports Israel but brew Hamas rallies in Toronto, Calgary, Vancouver, and other Canadian cities are tolerated, where Arab Canadians openly spew their hatred and venom toward Israel and the Jewish. Some of them said they are ashamed to be Canadians. All those Arabs deny that Hamas is a terrorist group. In France and Germany, Jewish synagogues are bombed, Jewish community centers are burned, Jews are attacked and killed daily, and those who march the streets chant death to the Jewish. Jew bigs come out and fight, Allahu Akbar, and carrying placards emblazoned with phrases like death to Israel and Hitler, you were right. Writing about the Holocaust by a person who lacks critical knowledge on the subject as me would not only be difficult but an impossible task. Having said this, I would like to add that no one today could claim to be ignorant and innocent of that greatest genocide ever committed in human history. Without mentioning the Holocaust, the narration of the long history of the persecution of Jews would not be completed. The Holocaust stands out as a unique crime of its kind because since the first man walked on the surface of the planet Earth, there has not been such a well-planned operation that scientifically and systematically almost completely destroyed one particular ethnic group of people, the Jewish. If anyone has told you that the Holocaust was a crime committed by a single tyrant called Adolf Hitler, you are being lied to. If you hear that it was only the Nazi regime that was responsible for the Holocaust, you have also been deceived. If you hear that almost the entire nation of Germany participated in that hideous crime, you are here just a half-truth. If someone said to you, the whole continent of Europe is responsible for the Holocaust, then such a person has told you some of the truth. The whole truth is that more than 20 countries in Europe, Asia, and Africa are involved in what is the greatest crime in human history, the Holocaust, and what is the greatest stigma against all of humanity. One single regime of government could not commit a crime of such a huge scale if it had not been assisted by other nations. Out of the 9 million Jews in Europe, 2/3 of them were killed in the Holocaust. 6 million. To lessen the burden of conscience, and many names were invented and attached to the Holocaust. Some historians consider it to be the outcome of the World War II. If it wasn't for the Holocaust, there would have not been World War II. If it wasn't for the Holocaust, the Third Reich wouldn't have come to power in Germany. If it wasn't for the mass murder of the Jews of all European countries, the Nazis wouldn't have invaded Poland and caused the beginning of the Second World War. Hitler chose Poland because it had the biggest population of European Jewry, 3,500,000 Jews. Hitler and his Nazi regime were not intending to engage in war with any other country. Their sole aim was to invade any country housing Jews to capture them, ship them to the extermination camps, put them in the gas chambers, and mass murder them. Some of their killing centers began with killing 1,000 a day until they reached a peak of 6,000 a day at the close of the Second World War. This mass murder operation lasted not for 1 year or 2 years, but went on for 7 long years, from 1939 to 1945. Great countries such as the United States of America and Great Britain won't hear about the undergoing complete annihilation of the Jews of Europe, dismiss the information as rumors of fearful Jews. Reasons preferred by some Holocaust experts are essentially baseless and cannot be accepted even as a slight possibility. Some historians said Hitler murdered 6 million Jews because he was a madman. Some believe that he looked at the Jews as not ordinary human beings, but noxious parasites whose existence posed a clear and present danger to humanity. When he was a young man, the greatest tyrant of history, Adolf Hitler, joined a satanic occult group that thought that certain fallen creatures could appear as human beings and do untold harm to ordinary human beings. Hitler thought the Jews were those beings. He believed that if the Jews could live, they would destroy the entire human race. Some historians argue that Hitler wanted it to get rid of the Jews in Germany because of their steadily increasing numbers in his country. This reason is the farthest one from the truth because at that time there were around 500,000 Jews in Germany, while there were 3,500,000 Jews in Poland. As we mentioned, to reach a target-rich environment, Hitler invaded Poland, which set off the Second World War. There are more Jews in Ukraine than in Germany. There are 101 more reasons that have been given to account for the greatest crime in human history, the Holocaust, but none of them is convincing or even remotely close to logic. To fathom the real reason, one must be a believer in the God of the Jews and read their Holy Bible. The same fallen being who tried to destroy the Jews through the Pharaoh of Egypt, Haman of Persia, Antiochus Epiphanes of Greece, Titus Vespasian, and Ilya Hadrian of the Roman Empire, the Spanish Inquisition, the Crusade of the Roman Catholic Church, and the Prophet of Islam Muhammad and his Mujahideen invaders, and their succeeding caliphates, sultanates, and terrorist groups to the present. It was the very demonic evil being who possessed Hitler and his collaborators and inspired them to kill the chosen people of God, the Jews. Each time the Jews were rescued by God and emerged victorious, while their persecutors were defeated and forced into retreat in perpetual shame. God has promised Abraham that he will bless those who bless him and curse those who curse him. Genesis chapter 12, verse 3. God's gifts and calling are irrevocable. Romans chapter 11, verse 28 to 29. When the Pharaoh of Egypt attempted to destroy the Jews, God destroyed his army, and the Jews celebrated the feast of Passover. When Haman of Persia tried to wipe them out of existence, they emerged victorious. So the Queen Esther, forever marking that day in history as the feast of their Purim. And with the Greek tyrant leader Antiochus Epiphanes, they are celebrating the feast of Hanukkah. Hitler and his satanic Nazi regime suffered the same fate, and in the same stroke, the Jews returned to their homeland, ending their wandering and suffering from their arrival at their promised land, the land of their fathers, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Judah, Aaron, Joshua, David, and Solomon, their everlasting inheritance. While he was in prison in the year 1923, Adolf Hitler wrote in his infamous book, Mein Kampf, the personification of the devil as the symbol of all evil assumes the living shape of the Jew. And so he, the Jew, advances on his fatal road until another force comes forced to oppose him, and in a mighty struggle hurls the heaven stormer back to Lucifer. Germany today, the next great war aim of Bolshevism. It requires all the force of a young machinery idea to raise our people again, to free them from the snare of this international serpent. Adolf Hitler, Mein Kampf. He continues to write, hence today, I believe that I am acting in accordance with the will of the Almighty Creator by defending myself against the Jew and fighting for the work of the Lord. Adolf Hitler, Mein Kampf. Hitler wrote his book when he was in prison and published it in the year 1925. When he came to power in Germany, he attempted to destroy an entire human race, the Jewish. He was influenced by a 2,000-year-old affliction, Antisemitism. It was like a snowball that kept rolling for centuries until it reached its apex in Nazi Germany's Holocaust, which led to the mass murder or a genocide of 6 million Jews, of whom 1.5 million were children and 2 million Jewish women. A network of over 40,000 facilities in Germany and German-occupied territories were used to concentrate, hold, and kill the Jews. Hitler saw that he was acting according to the will of God, but only Satan could have inspired such wickedness against innocent people. The Jews did nothing to deserve their mass extermination at the hand of the Nazis. Today, the new Nazis are the Iranian leaders who have vowed to wipe Israel off the world's map. It is hard to imagine what the Jews have done to deserve this wrath. This charter is also found in the second article of the Palestinian Hamas Constitution, albeit with a slight difference. They want to instead drive all the Jews into the Mediterranean Sea. Their false prophet Muhammad promised them that the last hour and the day of judgment would not come until Muslims will kill all the Jews of the world. In the year 1939, Germany began its invasion of Poland, Belgium, Holland, and Luxembourg. Soon thereafter, copies of a secret order were sent to all German authorities wherever Jews were found. The Jews were to be forcibly displaced to big cities with railway stations. They were then stripped of their homes and properties. Jews were to be registered according to their ages. Those above 10 years were ordered to wear the Star of David on their clothes. In the year 1941, all Jews were forced to live in ghettos. In addition to being provided with truly little food, they were strictly forbidden from seeking work or leaving the ghettos under any circumstances. Crime rates increased and the Jews became a permissible group of hunting and killing for the locals. These measures were to be executed in preparation for a final plan Whatever the Germans had inflicted on them thus far was nothing new to the Jewish. 19 centuries of persecution had prepared them well for this. Until this time, the Jews were unaware that the Germans were preparing them for mass murder and complete extermination of their race. Some historians argue that only Hitler and his close Nazi leaders were aware of the final verdict in their schemes, with the common Germans in complete ignorance. Yet other historians went to the extent of denying, even until this time, that Hitler's closest generals had full operational knowledge of his plan to systematically destroy the entire Jewish race. The Holocaust is the systematic, bureaucratic, state-sponsored persecution and murder of 6 million Jews by the Nazi regime and its collaborators. Holocaust is a word of Greek origin, meaning sacrifice by fire, in which the entire animal is burned. The Nazis kept their plan hidden from the Jewish for a long time. The first groups of Jews were told that they were going to be transferred from their ghettos to new settlements in the east. Other groups were shipped in crowded trains and taken to the places that were prepared for their execution. The first Jew to suspect the intention of the Germans was an 18-year-old boy. He informed his Jewish friends that a huge system of mass murder was set up against us everywhere, and there was no escape out of it. When questioned by his friends and some Jewish leaders, he could not provide his allegations. Some Jews began to harbor doubts when they realized that none of those who were taken away had returned to tell others about the new settlements. After a year, some of the leaders somehow learned about the evil plot against the Jews. They did not know what to do. Should they inform other Jews? Should they ask them to run away? Should they pick up arms and fight? They understood that every and any action on their part would only speed their destruction. The leaders found themselves in a helpless and hopeless situation. They discovered that the Jews are held captive and hostage by the Nazis. They have been placed in reservations or concentration camps. Then the Jewish leaders began to meet in secret and try to find out how to stop such evil schemes. They decided to delay or slow down the deportation of the Jews to the centers of killing them. They even prepared to bargain with the German officials who were responsible for the deportation. Some leaders suggested paying the Germans whatever amount of money they could afford to convince them to slow or stop the orders to transfer the Jews to the killing centers. The leaders tried to buy time, hoping that the war would end by defeating Germany. Some leaders proposed to be given the right to choose who would be sent to the killing centers. When the officials agreed, the leaders began to choose the elderly instead of the young Jews because the old people would have fewer years to live than the youth. Therefore, the leaders began to bargain on reducing the number from 1,500 every day to 1,000. They argued that the young Jews were highly useful labor resources. The Germans did not just put the Jews in isolation, but they forced them to work for free in their war effort. Not every leader only sought ways to delay this extermination, but some leaders refused to sign the deportation orders and either got killed but the Germans took their own lives. If the Germans sent an order for 2,500 Jewish and the leader refused to sign it, the Nazi soldiers would raid the ghettos and take many thousands instead. Many people might get killed or injured in the process. The Jew learned by experience to abuse the Nazi German is to lesser evil than to oppose him. When it became undeniable, clear that the Germans had decided to annihilate all the Jewish youth resorted to confrontation and took arms. They knew that they were under siege with no avenue of escape. Unfortunately, the youth resistance did not last for long before the powerful Nazi regime rooted them out. The Nazi battle-trained soldiers were able to destroy the few pockets of untrained and insufficiently armed Jewish youth resistant. Consequently, the Jews were left alone to face their looming annihilation by the most powerful army in the world at that time. The Roman Catholic Church was aware of German hostility and the systematic eradication of the entire Jewish race, the Holocaust, but turned a blind eye. Some Catholic historians mention a few examples of specific churches helping the Jewish resistance or providing the occasional sanctuary for a few Jews. But there was never any open condemnation or a confrontation with the aggressors by the Roman Catholic Church. Churches in Germany, Catholic or Protestant, failed to do anything to save the Jewish. The very least they could have done was to strongly recommend that they not participate in the mass murder. Additionally, a community-wide movement to help the Jewish escape from the concentration camps or hide them would have been helpful. Throughout this period, there was virtually no public opposition to anti-Semitism, nor any readiness by church leaders to publicly oppose the regime on the issues of anti-Semitism and state-sanctioned violence against the Jewish. Quoting Holocaust Encyclopedia, German churches, and the Nazi state. In the meantime, the Mufti of Jerusalem, Hajj Amin al-Husseini, came from the Middle East to Germany toward the genocide of the Jewish and congratulated Hitler and his top Nazi leaders for finding a final solution to the problem of the Jewish. Amin al-Husseini was taken on a tour around some concentration camps and visited the death camps of Auschwitz, Majdanek, Treblinka, and Mauthausen. In his memoirs, the Muslim Mufti of Jerusalem, Hajj Hussein al-Amini, mentioned that Heinrich Himmler informed him that the Germans had already exterminated 3 million Jews. In 1947, he declared, this Mufti of Jerusalem, it is the duty of Mohammedans or Muslims in general and Arabs in particular to drive all Jews from Arab and Mohammedan countries. Germany is also struggling against the common foe who oppress Arabs and Mohammedans in their different countries. It has very clearly recognized the Jews for what they are and resolved to find a definitive solution for the Jewish danger that will eliminate the scourge that Jews represent in the world. Quoting Cizrani, the year 2007, pages 54 to 57. First, we should explain what that wicked Muslim mufti of Jerusalem means by a final solution to the problem of the Jewish. The final solution to the problem of the Jewish was the secret code that the Nazi regime called its extermination protocols. In the year 1939, some top leaders of the Nazi regime met in a secret conference known as the Wannsee Conference, which led to the finalization of their scheme to destroy the Jewish race, which they call the final solution. In the months following the Wannsee Conference, the Nazi regime implemented their component plans for the final solution. Jews were deported, transported by trains or trucks to 6 camps, all located in occupied Poland, namely Kilmono, Treblinka, Sopepor, Blizek, Auschwitz, Birkenau, and Majdanek Loplen. The Nazis established 2 types of camps: concentration camps and killing or extermination camps. Concentration camps served primarily as detention and labor centers, and killing centers, also referred to as extermination camps or death camps, were almost exclusively death factories. All the Jews who were brought to the killing camps were sent immediately to the gas chambers, except very small numbers chosen for special work teams known as Sonderkommandos. The largest killing center was Auschwitz-Birkenau, which by the spring of 1943 had 4 gas chambers using Zyklon B poison gas in operation. At the height of the deportations, up to 6,000 Jews were gassed each day at Auschwitz-Birkenau in Poland. The SS considered the killing center top secret. To obliterate all traces of gassing operations, special prisoner units, the Sonderkommandos, were forced to remove corpses from the gas chambers and cremate them. The grounds of some killing centers were landscaped or conflagrated to disguise the murder of millions. In the year 1944, the SS liquidated the inhabitants of the Jewish camps, virtually all of whom had been deported to Auschwitz-Birkenau from Theresienstadt. The manner through which those mass murder operations were conducted was so horrific and hard to believe that human beings like you and me could inflict such pain and evil on innocents. German Jews were not being punished for any overt crime. In the entire history of the Jews in Europe, the Jews are perpetually the victims, silently enduring discrimination without objection, rebuke, or retaliation. Muslims kill millions of Europeans, invaded and captured many European countries, raped the women, enslaved the children, robbed properties, etc. The Ottoman Muslim Turks captured many European lands and destroyed half of Europe, but no one retaliated or accused them of crimes against humanity. Today, there are 4 million Muslim Turks in Germany, and none of them are attacked for the sins of their fathers or forefathers. Present day, we see only the Jews being attacked on the streets, in their community centers and synagogues, and in broad daylight. The Holocaust was the epitome of modern cruelty. It was hatched from the homes from which hung crucifixes. It was executed by people that were, for the most part, physically identical. It is very hard to imagine a human with a conscience and empathy willing to look into the eyes of an innocent child, a frightened Jewish woman, and a wizened old Jewish couple, and still proceed to load them in a gas chamber day after day. Many prisoners were deported to Operation Reinhardt killing centers and were killed by locking them in stationary gas chambers into which truck engines bombed deadly carbon monoxide gas. A minority of prisoners were killed by shooting. Over 1 million Jews were killed there by November 1944. Some Jews were selected from each transported group and forced to help in the killing of other Jews. Those workers were compelled to remove dead bodies from the gas chambers and bury them in mass graves. In the year 1943, the Jewish workers were forced to exhume the buried bodies and burn them in huge trenches or makeshift ovens made of railway tracks. Michael Brenbaum, an expert on the Holocaust, said entire Germany has turned it into a genocide state. All Germans were employed by the Third Reich in the Holocaust. Police, soldiers, railway workers, bossmen and bosswomen, doctors, nurses, professors, teachers, students, church leaders, and members or congregation of churches, employees of financial institutes, the Hitler Youth, the League of German Girls, every arm of the country's sophisticated bureaucracy was involved in the killing process. Parish leaders, parish churches, and the Interior Ministry supplied birth records showing who was Jewish. The post office delivered the deportation and denaturalization orders. The finance ministry confiscated Jewish property. German firms fired Jewish workers and disenfranchised Jewish stockholders. Universities and schools expelled all Jewish professors, teachers, and students. According to Saul Ferdlander, not one social group, not one religious community, not one scholarly institution or a professional association in Germany and throughout Europe declared it is solidarity with the Jewish. All Jewish men, women, elders, children, or infants were kept in the concentration camps before their eventual transfer to the death camps. During this intense period, many were subject to all kinds of abuses and rapes. They were beaten, starved, and raped by their guards and the locals. Concentration or labor camps were collectively known as ghettos. The term ghetto originated from the name of the Jewish quarter in Venice city, established in the year 1516, in which the Venetian authorities compelled the city's Jews to live. Various officials, ranging from local municipal authorities to the Austrian Emperor Charles V, ordered the creation of ghetto for Jews in the Frankfurt, Rome, Baruch, and other cities in the 16th and 17th century. Life in the ghettos was unbearable. Overcrowding was common. One but one apartment might house several families within. Plumbing broken down and human waste was thrown on the streets along with the garbage. Contagious diseases spread rapidly in such cramped and sanitary housing. People were always hungry. Germans deliberately tried to starve residents to allow by allowing them to purchase only small amounts of bread, potatoes, and meat. Some residents had some money or valuables they could trade for food smuggled into the ghetto. Others were forced to beg or steal to survive. During the long winters, heating fuel was insufficient for the huge demand, and many people lacked adequate clothing. People weakened by hunger and exposure to the cold became easy victims of disease. Tens of thousands died in the ghettos from illness, starvation, or a cold. Some individuals killed themselves to escape their hopeless lives. Before the final solution for the Jewish mass murder operations officially began in 1941, the Germans kept their victims in the ghettos. Typical Jew facilities were due to shooting, starvation, and disease. Deportation from the Lodis ghetto to the Kimlo killing center began in 1941. German police will carry out round-ups in the ghetto. Hundreds of Jewish, mainly children, the elderly, and the sick were killed on the spot during the deportations. Most of the deportees were immediately murdered in large groups by poisonous gas. The Nazis changed to gassing as their preferred method of mass murder because they saw it as cleaner and more efficient than shooting. Gassing also spared the killers the emotional stress many mobile killing squad members had felt shooting people face to face. When the Jews of Germany were wiped out and their ghettos were fully cleansed, the Nazis turned to their attention to the Jews of other countries. At the same time that ghettos were being emptied, mass of Jews and also the Roma gypsies were transported from the many distant countries occupied or controlled by Germany, including France, Belgium, and the Netherlands. The Netherlands, Norway, Hungary, Finland, Romania, Italy, North Africa, Yugoslavia, and Greece. The deportations required the help of many people and all branches of the German government. The victims in Poland were already imprisoned in ghettos and totally under German control. The deportation of Jews from the other parts of Europe was a far more complex problem. The German Foreign Ministry succeeded in pressuring most governments of occupied and allied nations to assist the Germans in the deportation of Jews living in their countries. The systematic killings of the Jews were carried out in all German occupied territories throughout 20 countries in Europe, in what we are now 35 separate European countries. The Wannsee Protocol reveals that Germany was planning to carry its final solution to the Jewish question to the remaining European countries of Britain, Sweden, Spain, Portugal, Turkey, and its colonies in South Africa and Madagascar. 6 million Jews were annihilated in less than 5 years. 3 million were killed in Poland and over 1 million in the Soviet Union. The Jewish victims of Poland were murdered through the gas chambers, while most of those killed in the Soviet Union were killed by mass shootings, and their bodies were buried in mass graves. The other 2 million were liquidated in the extermination camps, which were in Germany and its other occupied areas. Many more succumbed to starvation, diseases, and, beatings, and some were worked to death in the labor camps. Any person with 3 or 4 Jewish grandparents was considered a Jew and killed. Even Jews converted to Christianity or their parents or grandparents were counted Jewish and sent to the killing centers and exterminated. Only those whose grandparents converted to Christianity before January 1871, or 70 years ago, were exempted. Before we continue narrating this great crime in human history, let us stop and ask ourselves, after all those horrific mass murders or genocides of innocent Jewish who neither committed any crimes against any group of people nor started World War II, why the entire world remained silent? Why did the Allied forces still believe that those reports were just rumors created by the wild imagination of frightened Jews? America and Britain refused to come in the open and declare those reports until they were compelled to do so. Someone disguised himself as a German guard and entered one of those killing centers and witnessed the horrific mass murder of Jewish children, women, and men. When he came out, he challenged the two great countries that if they do not act, he is going to go with his first-hand reports to the media. Before he could go in public and publish his findings, America and Britain published a joint report and confirmed the systematic mass murder of the entire Jews of Europe. On December 17, 1942, the leaders of the United States, Great Britain, and the Soviet Union issued the first joint declaration officially noting the mass murder of European Jews and resolving to persecute those responsible for crimes against civilian populations of the Jews. Although the Holocaust became officially known the world over, the cowardly Nazis and their collaborators continued their atrocities against the innocent, non-combatant Jewish. German forces occupied Hungary on March 19, 1944. In April 1944, all Jews except those in Budapest were ordered into ghettos. Systematic deportation from the ghettos in Hungary to Auschwitz-Birkenau began the following months in May of 1944. In less than 3 months, nearly 440,000 Jews were deported from Hungary in more than 145 trains. The overwhelming majority are killed upon arrival in Auschwitz concentration camp, killing camp. By May of 1945, the Germans and their collaborators had murdered 6 million European Jews as part of a systematic plan of genocide, the Holocaust. When Allied troops entered the concentration camps, they discovered piles of corpses, bones, and human ashes, testimony to Nazi mass murder. Soldiers also found thousands of survivors, Jewish and non-Jewish, suffering from starvation and disease. For survivors, the prospect of rebuilding their lives was daunting. with few possibilities for immigration. Tens of thousands of homeless Holocaust survivors were housed in displaced prison camps. In the following years, many international and domestic courts conducted trials of accused war criminals. As we stated earlier, a single country as Germany alone could not commit a total mass murder on such a large scale if other countries did not help it. Almost the entire continent of Europe participated in that greatest crime in human history, the Holocaust. In Hungary, Slovakia, Croatia, Bulgaria, and Vichy France, police, military, and gendarmeric officials were vital to implementing the German initiated policy of deporting Jews resident in territories under their influence or control to the killing centers in the east. The Ostesa government of Croatia built its concentration camps. By the end of the year 1942, the Croat authorities had killed more than two-thirds of Croatia's Jews, around 25,000, many of them in the Josefovich camp system. Romania gendarmeric and military units directly murdered and deported Romanian and Ukrainian Jews in the re-annexed province of Bukovina and Bessarabia, as well as the Romanian administrated Transnistria in Ukraine. Many people in German occupied countries and regions collaborated with the German occupation authorities. Estonian, Latvian, Lithuanian, Ukrainian, and ethnic German collaborators played a significant role in killing Jews throughout Eastern and Southeastern Europe. Many served as perimeter guards in killing centers and were involved in the murder by poisonous gas of hundreds of thousands of Jews. Lithuanians, Latvians, Estonians, Belarusians, and Ukrainians jointly formed killing groups with the German SS and police, then reorganized. From the beginning, members of these parties or a self-defense group killed hundreds of Jews as well as real and perceived communists. The German recognized units became ruthless, unreliable police auxiliaries that assisted the German authorities, civilians, military, SSS, and German police in the massacre of hundreds of thousands of Jews. The German authorities required the assistance of the Axis nations and of indigenous collaborators in the regions they occupied to implement the final solution of the problem of the Jews. Axis governments, police, and military authorities aided in the round-up and deportation of Jews to killing centers, actively participated in the murder of Jews, and in several cases committed atrocities against their Jewish fellow citizens within their national borders. Between the year 1933 and the year 1945, Nazi Germany established all about 20,000 camps to imprison its many millions of victims. Labor camps, prisoner of war camps, transit camps, and camps that served as killing centers, often called extermination camps or death camps. The commandment of the Auschwitz death camp, Rodolphe Hoss, testified during his trial how death by gas chamber was conducted. According to him, Bunker 1 held 800 people and Bunker 2 held 1,200 Jewish. Once the chamber was full, the doors were screwed shut and solid bellets of Zyklon B were dropped into the chambers through vents into the side walls, releasing toxic HCN or hydrogen. Shouting and screaming of the victims could be heard through the opening, and it was clear that they fought for their lives. When they were removed, if the chamber had been very congested, as they often were, the victims were found half squatting, their skin color pink with red and green spots, some forming at the mouth or bleeding from the ears. The gas was then bombed out. The bodies were removed, which would take up to 4 hours. Gold fillings in their teeth were extracted with pliers by dentist prisoners, and dead woman's hair was cut. Improvement we made over the Treblinka death camp was that we built our gas chambers to accommodate 2,000 people at one time. Those Jews who were not murdered through the gas chambers at the death camps were killed by shooting or hand grenades at mass killing sites outside of towns. Before they were killed, they would be forced to dig their own graves. A truck driver who witnessed some of those mass killings by shooting described the scenes as one after the other. They had to remove their luggage, then their coats, shoes, and outer garments, and also underwear. When undressed, they were led into the ravine, which was about 150 meters long and 30 meters wide, and a good 1.5 meters deep. When they reached the bottom of the ravine, they were seized by members of the Sociopolis and made to lie down on top of Jews who had already been shot. The corpses were literally in layers. A police marksman came along and shot each Jew in the neck with a submachine gun. I saw this marksman stand on layers of corpses and shoot one after the other. The marksman would walk across the bodies of the executed Jews to the next Jew who had meanwhile lain down and shot him. Without a shadow of a doubt, it became obvious that the murder of 6 million Jews was not done by the Nazi regime alone, nor by the Germans only, but almost more than half of the population of the old continent, Europe, were involved, and many directly and deliberately participated in that great genocide in human history. Those 6 million innocent Jews were not killed by some ancient Germanic tribe, such as the Vandals, the Visigoths, the Ostrogoths, the Vikings, or the Huns, or even by the Mongols or the Muslim Turks. They were not murdered by the jungle savages of Africa, nor than the naked people living in the rainforests of the Amazon, or the Native Americans, or the Aborigines of Australia. They were mass murdered by the most civilized peoples in the world and the mid-20th century. They were killed by people who were intellectually and scientifically very advanced and who produced some of the most outstanding thinkers of modernity, such as Kant, Hegel, Marx, Einstein, and Heidegger. As the Third Reich began to collapse, thousands of prisoners in German occupied territories were sent on forced marches to the German interior to prevent the mass capture of prisoners by Allied forces. Surviving prisoners described these brutal ordeals as death marches due to the high mortality rate and the ruthlessness with which the SS guards shot those unable to keep up. Due to both the forced marches and the collapse of supply shipments to the camps during the last winter of the war, the death count among prisoners from starvation, disease, and exposure to increased dramatically. Historians estimate that nearly half of the more than 700,000 prisoners left in the concentration camp system in January 1945 had died by the end of May. Hundreds more died even after liberation because their bodies had sustained too much abuse to permit survival. In the last months of the war, the discovery of the horrors of the German camp system by Allied units brought the staggering scope of Nazi atrocity to the attention of the world. As Allied troops moved across Europe in a series of offensives against Nazi Germany, they began to encounter tens of thousands of concentration camp prisoners. Many of these prisoners had survived forced marches into the interior of Germany from camps in occupied Poland. These prisoners were suffering from starvation and disease. Colonel William W. Conan of the U.S. 7th Army said of Dasha, a death camp liberated by the U.S. Army, There our troops found sights, sounds, and stench horrible, beyond belief, cruelties so enormous as to be incomprehensible to the normal mind. Some trials of war crimes and crimes against humanity were conducted by the victorious Allied countries, the USA, Britain, and the Soviet Union, against some Nazi leaders. Unfortunately, many perpetrators of Nazi era criminality have never been tried or punished. In many cases, German perpetrators of National Socialist crimes simply returned to their normal lives and professions in German society. The hunt for German and ex-war criminals still goes on today. The search for and persecution of Holocaust criminals raises complex moral questions as well as tangled problems of international law and jurisdiction. As they reach the end of their lives, most Nazi offenders have escaped punishment. Neither the defeat of Germany nor the liberation of the Jews from the concentration camps ended the horror of the Holocaust. Many people in Europe continued to harbor anti-Semitic attitudes and were actively against Jewish settlements. Most Jewish survivors of the Holocaust who had survived concentration camps or had been in hiding were unable or unwilling to return to Eastern Europe because of both war, anti-Semitism, and the destruction of their communities during the Holocaust. Many of those did not return due to the fear for their lives. In Poland, for example, locals initiated several violent pogroms. Most of the people did not agree to the return of the Jewish to their homes. Many countries in Europe and outside of Europe refused to accept the Jewish as displaced immigrants of the war. Many Christians still believe in the old falsehood that Jews are Christ killers, that the Jewish poison Christian wells, and that the Jews are guilty of the so-called Lepel blood, the accusation that the Jews kill Christian children and use their blood to bake their feast cakes. All those accusations are false and baseless. They are the products of the 2,000-year anti-Semitic attitudes. Such unjustifiable hatred toward the Jewish influenced even non-Christian people such as Hindus and Muslims. The 20th century Hindu philosopher Osho Rajneesh claimed that the Jewish are guilty people and their guilt is very great because they crucified Jesus. Out of this guilt, they are always in search of their Adolf Hitler, someone who can kill them. He asserted that only when Jewish reclaim Jesus, they will be healthy and whole, and then there will be no use for Adolf Hitler. Rajneesh was not one of those Arab, Muslim, and Iranian Holocaust deniers. He admitted the Holocaust and did not deny its staggering number, but he considered it a lesser evil than the barbarity of the Hindus in India and the struggles of Indians for independence from the British. In criticizing historical teachers of pacifism who have encouraged people to just accept the situation in which you are, Rajneesh has stated that living in poverty is far more dangerous for more suffering than dying in a beautifully, scientifically managed gas chamber in Germany, and claimed that Hitler's violence was far more peaceful than, for example, the violence which erupted in India after independence from the British Crown. Hitler killed people in the most up-to-date gas chambers, where you don't take much time. Thousands of people can be put in a gas chamber, and just as wish is breast, within a second you evaporate. The chimneys of the factory start taking you. The smoke, you can call it holy smoke, and this seems to be a direct way toward this God. Those remarks were not made by a person who felt the horrors of the Holocaust, but he is still less evil than those who openly deny it. After all, what can we expect from a cult leader, a Hindu cult leader, who was rejected and denounced by his Hindu people and kicked out of the United States of America for his immoral teachings about free sex, where men and women live together in an unholy abode and practice sex as dogs and beasts? After their liberation from the death camps, the Jews were left to face their uncertain future all alone. No country wanted it to take some of them as refugees. Thousands upon thousands of Somalis, Eritreans, Sudanese, Iraqis, Syrians, Yemenis, Algerians, Afghans, Pakistanis, Turks, Palestinians, and Libyans were transferred as resettled refugees and admitted and funded on taxpayers' money and entered daily into the USA, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and Europe. In the United States, immigration restrictions strictly limited the number of war refugees, homeless, displaced, and Holocaust survivors permitted to enter the country. The British, who had received a mandate from the League of Nations to administer Palestine, severely restricted Jewish immigration there, largely because of Arab objections. Many countries closed their borders to Jewish immigration. Despite these obstacles, many Jewish displaced persons attempted to leave Europe as soon as possible. Quoting United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, Washington, D.C. After the end of the World War II, the League of Nations became the United Nations. Many countries closed their borders to the immigration of the Jewish. Other countries placed a restriction on the number of Jewish refugees. The Arabs did not want them to return to their homeland, the Promised Land, present-day Israel. Where would they go? There was a story of 53 Jewish orphan children, Holocaust survivors, that no country wanted it to accept them. After many correspondence and long waiting, Canada agreed to take only a few of them. Everyone knew that the Jewish were forced by the Roman emperors Titus, Vespasian, Ilya Hadrian, and Constantine the Great to leave their country, the Promised Land, today Israel, and go wherever they wanted it to go on earth. They were strictly told by those wicked tyrants, by those wicked pagan tyrants, that if they returned, they would be put to death. Simply put, that is how the Jewish became homeless and wandering in all nations for 19 centuries. Wherever they went, they were abused and exiled and killed. Their blood was shed in every country of the world. After the greatest crime in human history, the Holocaust, was committed against them, while the whole world stood and watched it, they were required to start all over again. They wanted them to beg on their knees for other nations to allow them to stay in their former ghettos in their soils and tolerate all kinds of abuses springing from that sickening antisemitism. They wanted them to be once again a nation of ghosts and parasites, the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the children of Israel, the children of the highest God, the custodians of the Holy Scriptures. See Romans 3, verse 2. God said, besides Jacob, I know no other nation. See Psalms 147, verse 19 to 20. No one wanted them in his country. The world did not want them to get back to their Jewish homeland in the Middle East, Israel. The whole world said they should not go back because the Arabs don't want them back. Where then should they go, or what should they do? Until those questions were debated by the newly founded United Nations, the survivors of the Holocaust must stay wherever they were and tolerate all kinds of abuses, pogroms, killings, and sufferings. For 2 years after their liberation from the death camps, the Jewish life hung between heaven and earth. As the crisis escalated, the British government decided to submit the problem of Palestine to the United Nations. In a special season, the UN General Assembly voted on November 29, 1947, to partition Palestine into two new states, one Jewish and the other Arab, a recommendation that the Jewish leaders accepted it and the Arabs rejected it. After the British began the withdrawal of their military forces from Palestine in early April 1948, Zionist leaders moved to establish a modern Jewish state. On May 14, 1948, David Ben-Gurion, the chairman of the Jewish Agency for Palestine, announced the formation of the State of Israel, declaring the Nazi Holocaust, which engulfed millions of Jews in Europe, proved anew the urgency of the establishment of the Jewish state, which would solve the problem of Jewish homelessness by opening the gates to all Jews and lifting the Jewish people to equality in the family of nations. Holocaust survivors from displaced person camps in Europe and detention camps in Cyprus were welcomed into the Jewish homeland. Many of them fought in Israel War of Independence in the year 1948 and 1949 against the Arabs who wanted it to exterminate them all. 75 years or more have passed, and still many historians, sociologists, sociologists, psychologists, criminologists, military experts in wars crimes, philosophers, and professors of religious studies could not give satisfactory answers for the reason that led Nazi Germany and its collaborators and the citizens of those 35 European countries who participated in the Holocaust. The horrific methods by which over 6 million Jews were annihilated without anyone to show solidarity with them have made the Holocaust stand out as the greatest genocide ever committed against one particular group of people, the Jewish. The final solution for the Jewish question is a crime committed against God before it has been committed against his own chosen people, the Jewish. Everyone who participated in that crime would never escape God's wrath. See Romans chapter 12, verse 19. The Holy Bible said all those who hate Zion, Israel, are going to face defeat, disgrace, destruction, and being removed from the blessing of God. See Psalm 129, verse 5. The Holy Bible also plainly stated, and whatever nation to which they will be in bondage, I myself will get, said God, and after that they will come out and serve me in this place. Quoting the Acts of the Apostle, chapter 7, verse 7. Although the Jews finally returned as a people to their promised land, a land that flows with milk and honey, they continued to live under a siege of gross hatred, surrounded now by far more dangerous haters than the ones they had endured their persecutions for hundreds of years in Europe. The Arabs are more anti-Semitic people than the Christians of Europe. Some believe that the Arabs cannot be accused of anti-Semitism because they are also Semitic people, the descendants of the son of Noah, Shem. Many modern scholars have proved this claim is baseless. The Arabs of the Arabian Venezuela, the Middle East, and North Africa today are also the descendants of Ham. Their ancestors were Hamitic tribes who came from Ham and immigrated from Ethiopia in Africa to Yemen. In addition, more than 80% of the Arabs today are originally non-Arab tribes whose ancestors were forcibly converted to Islam and Arabized by the edge of the sword during the Islamic invasions. This includes the Muslims of Egypt, who were originally Copts or Pharaohs before their conversion to Islam, the Berbers, also known as Amazigh of North Africa, today Tunisia, Algeria, and Morocco, the Chaldeans and the Kurds of Iraq, the Assyrians of Syria, the Phoenicians of Lebanon, the Africans of Mauritania, and the so-called Black Arabs of North Sudan and Somalia. Although the Somalis do not speak Arabic, still they are included in the League of the Arab Nations, which is a regional organization in the Arab world. Therefore, none of the so-called Arabs today are Semitic or the descendants of Shem, the son of Noah. Without exception, all of them are Hamitic, descendants of Ham. In truth, anti-Semitism is just a term created by historians to refer to unjustifiable hatred toward the Jewish. Such hatred does not arise from the fact that they are the descendants of Shem, but because they are accused of being Christ killers, homeless people, and the nation of parasites. They poison the wells of Christians, kidnap non-Jewish children, kill them, and use their blood to make their feast cakes. People who are plotting to take over the world, their existence poses a danger to the entire human race. What Hitler's Nazis and their collaborators murdered 6 million Jewry in Europe, historians found anti-Semitism no longer a proper description for the gross hatred directed toward the Jewish people and defined it as the Holocaust. Let us be truly clear on this. The hatred of the Arabs and Muslims toward the Jewish is neither racial nor politically motivated. It is deeply rooted in their religious teachings. No one in the entire world can claim to be a true Muslim and still love the Jewish. The Quran bears testimony that Allah despises the Jewish. See Surah Al-Fatiha 1 verse 7. In that sense, there is no human term that can rightly quantify the magnitude of enmity the Muslims in general and the Arabs in particular harbor toward the Jewish. Every day, each and every Muslim stands 5 times before his God Allah and recites a verse from his Holy Quran 17 times. The above verse and the emphasis of its repetition describes how the wrath of Allah abides with the Jewish forever. The verse commands the Muslim to say to his Allah during his daily prayers, "Guide us to the straight way, the right way of those people whom you have bestowed your grace." The Muslims, not the wrong way of the people who earned your wrath, the Jewish, nor of those who went astray, the Christians. In real life, the endemic hatred of Jews in the Muslim culture is entirely part and parcel of his religious dogma, and if he does not stand testimony to it, he must throw his Holy Quran away. It is a lie that Muslims hate the Jewish simply because they occupy what was once supposedly Muslim land. It is closer to the truth that the Muslims have problems with the race of people that God Allah hates, who is living next door. The hatred and enmity go back to a time before the establishment of the Jewish state, Israel, in the year 1948. It goes back to the time when the Prophet Muhammad exiled all the Jews from his newly founded Islamic state and massacred over 900 surrounded Jews in cold blood. Palestinians are proud of that massacre and cry on the streets, Khaybar, Khaybar, O Jewish, the army of Muhammad is coming soon. That is why the leaders of Iran have vowed to wipe Israel off the world's map. Likewise, Hamas, Hezbollah, and their sympathizers want to throw all Jews into the Mediterranean Sea. These Muslim leaders and every Muslim want to do their bit of completely annihilating all Jews of the world, thinking that they are doing a favor for God. They are no different from Hitler and everyone who assisted him in his mass murder of 6 million Jews. Muhammad promised Muslims that in the end time, they were going to kill all Jews of the world. After all, Hitler thought that he was doing the work of the Lord when he planned it and carried out the Holocaust. In this regard, he wrote in his infamous book, "Hence today I believe that I am acting in accordance with the will of the Almighty Creator by defending myself against the Jew. I am fighting for the work of the Lord." If anyone has in his heart an iota of hatred toward the Jewish, he cannot claim to be a true follower of Christ. Antisemitism comes from Satan, and it brings with it God's wrath, while the love of Jews comes from God, with it harlots God's blessings. See the book of Genesis, chapter 12, verse 1 to 3. The Jews are the chosen people and shall continue to be God's beloved ones. The Apostle Paul said, "I say then, has God cast away his people, the Jewish? God forbid. God has not cast away his people, but as touching the election, they are beloved for the Father's sakes." See Romans chapter 11, verse 1 and 2, and verse 28. These verses show that God had never cast away his chosen people, the Jewish, and they continue to be his beloved forever for their father's sake. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and all other Jewish patriarchs. Therefore, those who call themselves Christian and still participated in the Holocaust or kept silent and did nothing while those innocent Jews were killed had nothing to do with Christ except carrying his name in falsehood. A true follower of Christ is born again from above through the Holy Spirit, and the Spirit has been through the Holy Spirit and has been added to the true church of Christ, which is his body and bride. When the Mujahideen of the Islamic Caliphate ISIS killed the Shiite Muslims, enslaved and sold the Yazidi women and children, and drove the Iraqi Christians from their homes, the whole world protested it, and more than 70 countries joined the US-led coalition that initiated it. Multiple airstrikes against ISIS, which ultimately led to the destruction of its Islamic Caliphate in Syria and Iraq, and the recent deaths of its Caliph Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. When the Palestinian children's fatalities were reported during the Israeli airstrikes against Hamas militants who fired their rockets at Israel to indiscriminately kill every Jewish man, woman, and child, the whole world stood up against Israel, while no one seemed to care about the evils caused by the action of the terrorists of Hamas. Why is there the same lack of concern just because the victims are Jewish? Are they not entitled to collateral damage as a defense tool? The symbol in the flag of Nazi Germany was the swastika, which is also a holy symbol in Hinduism and Buddhism. Many Muslim countries put in their flags the crescent, which is the symbol of the moon god, Allah, who was the Babylonian god Baal. Like Hindus, Muslims worship the pagan Arab god, the stone idol. And like Buddhists, they worship the founder of their religion, Prophet Muhammad, and worship the woman's pussy, the black stone, which is shaped in the like of the private parts of the female. Like the Jains, who worship the phallus of Mahavira, the founder of their religion, Jainism. Wherefore, there is no difference between Nazism, Hinduism, Buddhism, and Islam. All these religions worship symbols and their founders, and all of them have the same origin. They can be traced back to the mystery religion of Babylon, which had been created by Satan through the Babylonian king god Nimrod and his consort goddesses Semiramis and her son god Tammuz. Semiramis murdered her husband, King Nimrod, when she came to know that he was planning to kill her because she became pregnant with an illegitimate child. She was impregnated by one of the priests of her temple, where thousands of prostitutes offered themselves to the male worshippers. Tammuz murdered his mother, Semiramis, when he learned about her secret plot to kill him. Satan was worshipped through this very dysfunctional Babylonian family. After their deaths, Nimrod continued to be worshipped as the sun god and Semiramis as the moon goddesses. She became known as the Great Mother, Divine Mother, Virgin Mother, and Queen of Heaven. The names of those Babylonian gods and goddesses kept changing from culture to culture. The Babylonians called King Nimrod the god Marduk, Pel, and Nepo, and his wife Semiramis became the goddess Astarte. For the ancient Canaanites, Marduk was introduced as Baal and worshipped as the sun god. He was also worshipped by the Phoenicians, Syrians, and Egyptians. The Holy Bible mentioned that the people of the first human kingdom of Babel decided to settle in Mesopotamia and build their Tower of Babel and worship the first man-made religion of Nimrod, Semiramis, and Tammuz. Babel means the gate of God. God confounded their language, destroyed their tower, and scattered them all over the world. See the book of Genesis chapter 11, verse 1 to 9. From that time, people started to speak in different languages. They spread all over the world, and wherever they went, they carried with them that very satanic virus of the Babylonian mystery religion. Ever since every man-made religion was simply a disguised form of that mystery religion, and all the different names of gods and goddesses were the names of the first three people who were worshipped by people instead of God: King Nimrod, his consort Semiramis, and their son Tammuz. Satan was worshipped by proxy through those gods and goddesses. The goddess Semiramis became known in Greece as Aphrodite or Athena, in Egypt as Isis, in Canaan Ishtar, in Ephesus Diana, in Israel as Ashtaroth, in Phoenicia Uruba. She also became the name of the whole continent of Europe. In Rome, Venus, and India, Kali or Sita. She also has been given many titles such as Queen of Heaven, the Great Mother, Mother Goddess, and Mother Nature. She also was worshipped with her son Tammuz as the Mother child god and goddess. This mystery religion created by Satan empowered the dysfunctional Babylonian family and spread all over the world. We refer to it as a mystery religion because Satan promised to reveal the secret knowledge that God supposedly hid from Adam and Eve when they were in the Garden of Eden. A knowledge that will enable them to become gods or enable them to gain their salvation through their good works. It is also given the term mystery because Satan deceived man by making him believe that through studying the stars, astrology, he could discern his destiny. Howbeit, in the next chapter, after Genesis chapter 11, that is Genesis chapter 12, verse 1 to 3, God initiated a plan for human salvation. He chose a man called Abraham from Mesopotamia to Babylonia, today Iraq, and gave him 4 promises. 1, he will give him a land, the land of Canaan. 2, he will make him a great nation, the nation of Israel. 3, he will bless those who will bless that nation and curse those who curse them. And 4, through his seed, Christ, he is going to bless all the families of the earth. God confirmed this Abrahamic covenant to his sons Isaac, Jacob, Israel, the 12 patriarchs, and their descendants, the children of Israel, throughout the entire Holy Bible, from Genesis to Revelation. Through that single nation, God is going to redeem man from his sin. God is going to incarnate as a human and die on the cross for the sins of the whole world. He is going to take the punishment of man and offer the free gift of salvation to man, and that can be received by faith in Jesus through grace. God continued to reveal his plan of salvation through the Jewish, culminating in the arrival of his son into the world. Through Christ, God communicated his final stage of human redemption. The promise to Abraham in Genesis chapter 12, verse 3 was not fulfilled to all families on earth until Christ died on the cross, was raised from the grave on the 3rd day, and the gospel was offered to all nations. Satan tried to prevent the spread of the gospel through various tricks, but the good news reached many nations. Satan then used his old trick of mystery religion and began to create cults and many man-made religions. He also began gradually corrupting the church until he established his Christendom. He made his Pope replace Christ and Mary to be co-redemptive with Jesus Christ. Nevertheless, the true believers in Christ continued to persevere amid misinformation and false dogma, enduring much persecution and opposition in the process. After 6 centuries of endless efforts, Satan finally succeeded in twisting the promise to Abraham, rechanneling it through his son Ishmael instead of Isaac. He raised his false prophet and used him to create works-based salvation. He invented a new form of a mystery religion that teaches that man can earn his salvation through his good deeds. Through his self-appointed prophet, the devil managed to deceive millions, by today's count 1.5 billion Muslim followers. The self-appointed prophet Muhammad rejected the divinity of Christ and considered it the greatest form of shirk, unbelief of associating partners to God. He also condemned all the basic tenets of the Christian faith. He rejected the incarnation, the Holy Trinity, the crucifixion, the death of Jesus on the cross, and the resurrection of Christ from the grave. In short, he completely wrote off the entire Christianity as blasphemy and the work of the devil. His followers persecuted the followers of Christ and killed 60 million of them during the spread of their religion in Christendom. Satan tried to wipe Christians out of existence as he had tried with the Jews before. The Christians that he failed to corrupt, he decided to destroy with his new army of Muslim Mujahideen. With Christians, the devil played every dirty trick to get rid of them. He accused them of corrupting the pure message of Jesus Christ and therefore created a justification for the followers of his puppet Prophet Muhammad to use their swords to chastise those who changed the word of God. The self-ordained prophet blocked his followers from joining Christianity and threatened to kill everyone who dared to forsake his new religion through the law of apostasy. With the children of Israel, the devil adopted different ways to bring about their destruction. From the time God anointed a nation, Satan was clear the nation would bring about his ultimate destruction. He tried to destroy them in Egypt through his puppet Pharaoh, but failed. He attempted to destroy all of them through Haman of Persia, and God intervened once again. He made many attempts through the Egyptians, Assyrians, Babylonians, Greeks, Romans, Muslims, Crusaders, and other Arabian kings and religious authorities, but God always frustrated his attempts. Nonetheless, Satan does not give up. His is the do it or die for it scenario. He continued to abuse and persecute them through various forms of antisemitism. In recent history, he came remarkably close to achieving his goal with the Nazi Germany in the Holocaust and its collaborators. God stretched out his hand and saved them, took them from the death camps, and brought them on the wings of eagles back to their promised land. Satan redirected his efforts by filling the hearts of 200 million Arabs with gross hatred, resulting in many attempts to destroy the state of Israel, none of which prevailed. He then spread the cause of antisemitism and anti-Zionism to over 1.5 billion Muslims and untold millions of their sympathizers from other religions and nations. I strongly believe the false prophet mentioned in the book of Revelation is referring to Muhammad, the founder of Islam. I would like to explain why I think that Muhammad is the false prophet charged with assisting the beast or the Antichrist mentioned in the book of Revelation. First of all, let me say that according to the Holy Bible, there are two religions in the world. The first one is a false religion created by the dysfunctional Babylonian family, which is known as mystery religion in Genesis chapter 11. The second religion is the plan of God for the salvation of mankind, which is started by God in Genesis chapter 12. He chose a man, Abraham, and promised to give him a son, Isaac. That son would found a nation, the nation of Israel, and such a plan of redemption of mankind from sin shall be fulfilled or completed by Christ through his incarnation, crucifixion, and resurrection. Orthodox Judaism and true Christianity. Many people claim that Islam is also belonging to the two Judeo-Christian religions as one of the valid Abrahamic religions. I would like to show that this claim is absolutely a false claim, and the real source of Islam is the mystery religion of Babylon. Having said this, let me go back and trace the beginning of this pseudo-religion of the Arabs. The mystery religion, which was the foundation and source of all false and man-made religions, began in a brothel by a beautiful Babylonian, or today Iraqi, prostitute named Semiramis. This was her Greek name, but in the Babylonian language, she was known as Samira Mat, which means the gift of the sea. Semiramis was an extremely beautiful woman. She was Babylonian by birth and lived her life in Mesopotamia, land between two rivers, Tigris and Euphrates. Satan used her to start the first temple prostitution worship in the world. The first king in the world, Nimrod, was originally from the land of Cush, today Ethiopia or Sudan. He became a mighty tyrant and began to conquer other lands until he arrived at the city of Babel, today in Iraq. He established his kingdom there. Soon after, he saw the beautiful prostitute Semiramis and was enchanted by her marvelous beauty and sexy body. He took her out of the brothel and made her his queen. He created different stories to alter her origin, legitimizing her. She became a virgin who came out of the water and in some accounts born of a fish. Yet another tale tells how a shepherd boy found her at the river bank when she was just a small infant born, took her to his family, where she was raised there. This miraculous origin qualified Semiramis to be not only the wife of King Nimrod, but as a queen goddess too. She was the one who convinced Nimrod to build the Tower of Babel and exalted him as a king god. Then she began to introduce her satanic mystery religion, which she learned at the brothel. She claimed that through her mystery religion, people could gain access to the secret knowledge that Lucifer revealed to Adam and Eve at the Garden of Eden when they ate the apple from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Through this secret knowledge, man could obtain godhood and become a god. So she claimed that her mystery religion could help its followers obtain knowledge about their future through astrology. The belief that human destiny and the knowledge of the entire universe could be obtained through studying the stars. Today we call those occult practices horoscopes. Her mystery religion developed and began to introduce many occult practices such as astrology, divination, sorcery, witchcraft, magic charms, omens, mediums, and spirits. The Holy Bible strictly warns us against engaging in those occult practices. See the book of Deuteronomy chapter 4 verse 19, chapter 18 verse 9 to 14, 1 Samuel chapter 31 verse 1 to 6, Acts of the Apostles chapter 19 verse 18 to 20, the book of Leviticus chapter 19 verse 31, chapter 20 verse 6, the book of Isaiah chapter 8 verse 19, chapter 47 verses 13 to 15, the book of Ezekiel chapter 13 verse 20, and the book of Zechariah chapter 10 verse 2. If you carefully examine most religions other than Judeo-Christian, Orthodox Judaism, and true Christianity, you will find its followers are engaged in occultism, idol worship, or sexual immorality. For example, if you look at Hinduism, we would discover it is nothing except magic rituals such as puja practice and idol worship. There are 330 million gods in Hinduism. The goddess of evil, Kali, the elephant god of luck, Ganapati, in English Ganesh, the monkey god, Hanuman, Lord Krishna, the Lord Buddha, the Lord Rama, Lord Shiva, the Lord Vishnu, the goddess Durga, and the goddess Mahalakshmi, just to name a few. Islam also combined all the occult practices of the mystery religion. Its followers worship the black stone, which made in the form of a woman's pussy and is a leftover from the ancient Arab temple prostitution rituals. The Bible strictly warns true believers in God against idol worship. You shall not make for yourself an idol in the form of anything in heaven above or on the earth beneath or in the waters below. You shall not bow to them or worship them. Exodus chapter 20, verse 4 to 5. Every day, Muslims face the black Kaaba, housed in this black stone, and bow to it in worship. If the religion of Islam derived from the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, it should not have occult practices such as idol worship and the pagan Hajj rituals. Islam included, to this day, immoral sexual practices initiated by the female brothel keeper Semiramis. It allows its followers to practice adultery by engaging in sexual relationships with 4 women at the same time. The same verse permits them to have sex with them without the marriage, born with female slaves, whether they are obtained through warfare or bought from the slave markets. See Surah Al-Nisa 4 verse 3. It also permits its followers to marry underage girls. See Surah Al-Talaq 64 verse 5. In addition to all this immoral and evil promiscuity, Islam teaches about the virgins of paradise, believing that they are going to receive 72 eternal virgins. Many Muslims willingly blow themselves into smithereens. Suicide bombers are nothing but another form of human sacrifice to the devil, which the ancient Canaanites practiced, offering their children in fire to Molech, Marduk, Baal, Nimrod. The fire god Molech was the tutelary deity of the children of Ammon, Jordanians today, and initially identical with the Moabitish Chemos. Fire gods appear to have been common to all the Canaanite, Syrian, and Arab tribes who worship the destructive element under an outward symbol with the most inhuman rites. Quoting Hitchcock's Bible names dictionary, Molech. Idol worship, immoral practices, and human sacrifices are the tenets of the mystery religion that the devil introduced through Semiramis, Nimrod, and Tammuz. Islam is no different from all man-made religions. Satan's inspired religions such as Hinduism, Jainism, Sikhism, Confucianism, Shinto, and Taoism. If we examine them, we will find in them there are some of or all the occult practices of the Babylonian mystery religion. Let us now look at how the Prophet Muhammad gradually introduced his followers to Satanism. The life of Muhammad revealed to us how he became involved in the occult. His life resembled the life of the very same Babylonian family whom Satan used to introduce his mystery religion. Muhammad's biography showed that he married a woman who was already introduced to the practice of sorcery through her former 2 husbands. Both her husbands were sorcerers, and she eventually became a sorceress too. When she married her third husband, Muhammad, she was 15 years older than him and fully under the control of the devil. She was possessed by the spirit of Jezebel, which was the spirit of Semiramis. It is a spirit of control, domination, and intimidation. The Holy Bible tells us how the very same evil spirit had controlled the wife of the Jewish king Ahab, who was called Jezebel. Jezebel was a Phoenician woman, today Lebanese. God forbid the children of Israel to marry strange women. Jezebel killed all the prophets of God and introduced to Israel her pagan god Baal and goddess Ashtorwati. She is written to kill the most powerful prophet in Israel, Elijah. The same spirit led Semiramis to murder her husband Nimrod. It is also the same spirit that led her to attempt to murder of her son Tammuz. But her son came to know about her plot and kill her before she could assassinate him. It is the very same spirit that controlled the first wife of Muhammad, Khadija bint Khuwaylid. Khadija was an extraordinarily rich merchant woman. She was called the princess of Mecca. At the age of 40, she had already married two sorcerers. Muhammad was 25 years old when that powerful Arab woman married him. In the Arab culture, a marriage of this sort is considered a scandal. The Arab man will not marry a woman who is senior to him and who has lost her virginity when she marries her other two husbands. So it was a beneficial marriage for both parties. Her third husband, Muhammad, was just a small employee in her caravan business. Khadija wanted it, a young man in her bed, and she had other plans for him. Although she was a rich woman, the deaths of her former two husbands deprived her of the occult practices that she had become addicted to. In the Arab culture, the woman who practices sorcery is condemned as a witch. Quite the opposite. Arab men who practice divination and sorcery are accorded respect. Such a man is called kahin, which means a sorcerer. Pagan Arabs did not distinguish between the kahin and the prophet. For them, both were persons who claimed to possess secret knowledge to obtain through God or from jinn or devils. Anyone losing his camel or some precious things would go to the kahin for help in locating his property. Before she lost her two husbands, Khadija's house was like a hospital crowded with visitors seeking consultation and paying consultation fees. After she married Muhammad, she found herself being hooked on a blind man who had nothing in him to attract others. She involved him in her sorcery, but she could not succeed in making a powerful sorcerer out of him. So she switched to another facet of sorcery, prophethood. Somehow she convinced him to claim to be the prophet of Mecca. She sought the help of her male cousin, Wara ibn Nawfal. Wara was also a sorcerer who repented it and became a Christian, a follower of Aryan Christianity, which teaches that Jesus is not God, but a created human being. The man Waraga Ibn Nawfal did not last for long in that false form of Christianity. He apostatized and became a follower of a newly established Arab cult called Hanafiya. The followers of this cult rejected idol worship and claimed that they were worshipping the God of the Arabs' father Abraham. And they worshipped a god called Ar-Rahman, which originally worshipped by the Yemenis as Venus. From Waraqah and through his many caravan trips to Syria, Muhammad was introduced to the stories of the Old Testament prophets. However, he was introduced to a distorted form of Christianity that permeated the Arabian Peninsula through the Aryan priests and monks. There is a well-known story mentioned by all Islamic authentic books that tell of Muhammad's meeting with a Christian monk by the name of Buhaira, who identified him as the future prophet of God as foretold by the prophets of the Holy Bible. Khadija began to instill in the mind of her young husband the idea of becoming a prophet of Mecca and possibly entire Arabia. Muhammad preached his religion to the Arabs only, but after his death, his followers spread it out of the Arabian Peninsula at the tips of their swords and spears. In the beginning, Muhammad was not at all interested in being a kahin or a prophet. He considered the kahin and the prophet to be essentially poets. At that time, the Arabs believed all the three were possessed by jinn or demons and could use them to obtain hidden or secret knowledge which not briefly to ordinary human beings. In his biography, Muhammad said, "None of God's creatures more I hate than an aesthetic poet or a man possessed." By a man possessed, he meant a kahin or a prophet. Nevertheless, Khadija exercised full control over him and hence manipulated him to accept her ideas. She wanted him to claim to be a prophet, and through such a claim, she could be seen to have married a husband who has prominent status in the society of Mecca. She was like the woman Semiramis, who convinced her tyrant husband, King Nimrod, to claim to be a god and demand worship from his subjects. After killing him, she told his subjects that her husband became an immortal god and was to be worshipped as the sun god known in the Middle East as Baal, Marduk, El, Ilah, and Allah. She also predicted that after her departure, she would continue to be a goddess and likewise destined to be worshipped as the moon goddess surrounded by the stars, Ashtar and Ashtaroth. She was the one who introduced the worship of the crescent and the star, which became the symbol of the Arabs' god, Allah. Islam has since until today adopted it. The first wife of the Prophet Muhammad, Khadija's plan began to unfold gradually during her lifetime. Her husband claimed that an angel of God appeared to him while he was worshipping in a cave called Qar Hira and gave him a message to his people. According to the Sirah, or a biography of the Prophet, Khadija was the first person to believe his claim. The initial message of Muhammad was simple and mainly glorified the greatness of God and his creation. It was directed at the polytheists of Mecca. It had advised them to turn away from idol worship and instead worship the God of the people of the book, Jews and Christians, who were initially recognized as the only people who have true books from God. The message at that time was also based on a peaceful approach and gave everyone freedom of choice. Women were treated as equal to men in every respect, and Muhammad remained married to only one woman, Khadija. There is sufficient evidence in the verses of the Quran that during this period that had been dictated to Muhammad by Waraqa ibn Nawfal. The old man Waraqa was the main maker of the verses of the Quran in the Meccan period. Until this period, Muhammad was a mere puppet in the hands of his powerful wife Khadija and the apostatized its apostatized cousin Waraqa. Waraqa suddenly died and created a serious problem for Khadija and Muhammad. Waraqa was a powerful kahin and a possessed poet. He used to get the verses that he dictated to Muhammad through the jinn that possessed him. After the death of Waraqa, Muhammad fell into despair and became suicidal. According to an authentic hadith of Al-Bukhari, Muhammad made several attempts to commit suicide after Waraqa died, and with him, the source of his alleged divine inspiration ceased. But after the seerah states that, but after a few days, the man Waraqa died, and the divine inspiration also paused for a while, and the Prophet became so sad as we heard that he intended it several times to throw himself from the tops of high mountains. And every time he went up to the top of a mountain to throw himself down, the angel Gabriel would appear before him and say, "O Muhammad, you are indeed Allah's apostle in truth," whereupon his heart would become quiet and he would calm down and would retain hope. And whenever the period of the coming of the inspiration used to become long, he would do as before. But when he used to reach the top of a mountain, Gabriel would appear before him and say to him that he had said before. Sahih al-Bukhari, volume 9, hadith number 111. For a short period, his wife Khadija supported her husband Muhammad and encouraged him to continue his mission as a God-sent prophet. From this point, Muhammad started to create his verses for the Quran. He decided the direction of the content of his messages. Should he continue this peaceful approach initiated by Waraqa, or change his direction and invent his course of action? Muhammad decided to turn the tide and proceed in the opposite direction. It was clear that Waraqa's peaceful approach did not gain many followers. The people of Mecca only ridiculed him and flatly rejected his message. They told him to his face that he was an impostor, sorcerer, and madman. They also told him that the stories of the Jewish and Arab prophets, which he incorporated in his Quran, were already known by them. Some of them began to attack him physically. There was a story of a powerful Arab woman who came with an axe to kill him because he insulted her through his Quran. After the death of Waraqa, the Quran lost its charm and moral standards, beginning to use vulgar language in the context of its opponents. For example, an Arab man said to Muhammad, "You are a madman." The Quran responded it by calling the man son of a bitch. See Surah Al-Qalam 68, verse 13. Before he recovered from his loss, Muhammad lost his wife, Khadija, too. She died and left him with no one to direct his next move. The death of those two relatives had left him in a vacuum, which turned him to a suicide again. Muhammad made several attempts to commit suicide by trying to throw himself from the high mountains. No one would resort to such violent means of suicide unless he was in serious trouble or mentally disturbed. The two persons who made him a prophet had suddenly died and left him alone to face the hostile Meccan society. None of the three conspirators had anticipated that their secret conspiracy would end up this way. Until this time, Muhammad could not have known that the true source of his new religion was Satan, and not the two whom he had suddenly lost. Satan always looks for tyrant rulers, sorcerers, and people who are willing to claim to be the prophets of God. He knows that it is through these types of evil men that he can rain much destruction upon the world. The false prophet is an abomination to God because he tells lies about God. The tyrant rulers like Nimrod, Pharaoh, Nero, and Hitler exalted it themselves and wanted it people to fear them and worship them instead of God. This shows that Satan cannot just choose any ruler or any person and turn him into a tyrant or a false prophet. After the deaths of the two evil schemers, Wara and Khadija, the message of the Quran underwent drastic changes. The new verses of the Quran lost their magical tune and poetical spirit. They are no longer short and full of rhythm. They became lengthy and boring. They are painted in plain vernacular Arabic, which could be written by laymen. Before the days of the plotters, Waraga and Khadija, the only source of the new religion was the Quran. But now a new source was introduced, known as the Hadiths, sayings and deeds of the Prophet Muhammad. They are also considered to be divinely revealed and have the same religious and legal binding as the verses of the Quran. The Quran also endorsed the divine origin of the Hadiths and said about Muhammad, he does not speak out of low desires. It is not but in inspiration inspired. Surah Al-Najm 53, verse 3 to 4. 80% of today's Sharia laws are made from the Hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad. Muhammad could now dictate his new laws by using everyday, ordinary street language which is spoken by anybody. The initial peaceful approach was abrogated and replaced by a violent approach. Accepting or rejecting the message of the new religion was no more a matter of choice. Everyone in Arabia had to become Muslim or suffer death. Anyone who leaves Islam must be killed as an apostate. After this new development, Muhammad claimed that he had been commanded by God to fight and kill people until they accepted it, his new religion. An exemption was made for the people of the book, the Jews and Christians, if they agreed to pay the jizya, while have been subjugated and humiliated by Muslims. Nevertheless, the encounter of the Prophet Muhammad with the Jewish revealed that this exemption, if any, was rarely implemented. Everywhere his followers went, they killed Jews and Christians and enslaved and raped their women and children and confiscated their properties and occupied their lands. After the departure of Khadija, Muhammad suddenly became a violent and tyrannical ruler. With the death of Khadija, the spirit of Jezebel and Semiramis lost control of the new prophet, and the violent spirit of Baal and Nimrod took over. Muhammad suddenly became violent and hostile. His message became the message of a tyrant who dictates his no answered terms to his people. It was clear that he was possessed by the violent spirit of the tyrant Nimrod. He began to assassinate anyone who disagreed with him or composed poems to criticize him. He even arranged the assassination of two poetess women who composed verses criticizing his violent nature, Asma bint Marwan and Kirfa. He also began to marry many women and in a short period accumulated a large number of harems for his personal satisfaction. He even married a female child of 6 Aisha bint Abu Bakr. In her time, his first wife Khadija kept him under close watch and did not allow him to take on another wife beside her. That impediment, like many others, had been removed. Many non-Muslim scholars struggle to understand the split personality of the Quran. Why does a book supposedly inspired by God contain within it two contradictory messages? Some verses teach a peaceful message, and some verses dictate violence. It is no surprise that many scholars are still frustrated by the irreconcilable messages of the Meccan period and the Medina period. Muslim scholars invented a law known as abrogation or an-nasikh al-mansukh to reconcile the split personality of the Quran. They simply claim that the later message of Mecca, of Medina, abrogated the one before it. They argued that when Islam was weak and Muhammad had a few followers, God granted freedom of choice. But when Islam gained strength because of its many followers, freedom was henceforth forbidden, and Islam the only acceptable religion to God. For an outsider, this solution further complicates the issue it tries to solve. How God could say initially no compulsion religion and then turn around and say kill infidels wherever you find them. Why would God's inspired word command his prophet to fight and kill people until they bear witness that there is no God but Allah and Muhammad his messenger? Well, such difficulty does not arise for the person who understands that the Quran has two contradictory messages because it has two sources. The old man Waraq ibn Nawfal and Muhammad ibn Abdullah. What makes the religion of Muhammad different from all other religions of the world is its violent message and misogynistic teachings. His teachings degraded women and placed them in a status lower than animals. It introduced many new teachings alien to the tenets of other religions, such as jihad for spreading Islam by the sword, the law of apostasy, which orders killing those who leave Islam, polygamy, wife beating, child marriage, the concept of right hand possessed, which permits sex with female slaves out of the marriage bond, slavery, vengeance of paradise, cruel hatred toward the non-believers, and of course, antisemitism. Before this term was invented, Muhammad persecuted and killed the Jewish and called them brothers of apes and pigs. He exiled all Jews out of Arabia and confiscated their homes and properties. He showed cruel hatred toward the Jewish. Muhammad proved with no outside help that he embodied the values of the Antichrist. He also showed that he was completely controlled by the devil through the violent religion he and his followers spread all over the world, resulting in the deaths of 80 million Hindus and 60 million Christians, an uncountable number of Jewish during the Islamic invasion of the Christian, Jewish, and Hindu lands. Now I would address the overhanging question as to whether Muhammad is the false prophet in the book of Revelation. Of course, 14 centuries ago, Muhammad died and went to hell. After his death, his followers, empowered by his violent message, went all over the world spreading his satanic religion by the sword. His religion, on the other hand, remained in the mortal world, growing from strain to strain. Islam now is considered the fastest growing religion in the world. 1.5 billion Muslims and Muslimas. We need to look at the driving force that keeps his religion going and catalyzes the violence associated with it. Nimrod and Semiramis died a long time ago in history, but their mystery religion never died with them. Instead, its legacy keeps manifesting itself in every culture and multiplying beyond its original boundaries. The only book that guides us in our search for an answer is the Holy Bible. We now know that the main source of all man-made religions is Satan, and hence their origin can be traced back to his mystery religion which he created in Babylon. The Holy Bible calls Babylon the mother of harlots and abomination of the earth. The Bible said, and upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. See the book of Revelation, chapter 17, verse 5. The Bible also says, a second angel followed and said, Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great, which made all the nations drink the maddening wine of her adulteries. Revelation chapter 14, verse 8. While these two verses speak about the earthly city of Babylon, they also point to the future of that city. We know that the earthly kingdom of Babylon, of Nimrod and Semiramis, disappeared many years ago. Accordingly, the book of Revelation speaks about the spiritual kingdom of darkness that Lucifer had created and spread all over the world. Mystery, Babylon the Great, mystery religion of Satan, mother of all prostitutes and abomination of the world, religions of the world that originated from the mystery religion of Babylon. The end of all those abominable religions is stated as follows. Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great, the final abode of Satan and his spiritual kingdom of darkness and his evil spirits, and those who follow him will be in the lake of fire. See the book of Revelation chapter 18 verse 2 to 3. Before we end this article, it is important to find out what the Bible says about the origin of Satan, sin, and the fall of the devil and man. The Holy Bible tells us that Satan is behind every form of worship which does not originate in God. The books of Isaiah chapter 14 and Ezekiel chapter 28 refer specifically to the kings of Babylon and Tyre. They also reference the spiritual power behind those kings, namely Satan. From these passages, we understand that Satan is an archangel called Lucifer, means morning star, who was created perfectly by God. He rebelled against God due to his sin of pride. Satan desired to be God, not the servant of God. He wanted to overthrow God from his throne, occupy it, and be the ruler of the entire universe. He convinced one set of the angels to join his rebellion, but they were defeated by God's army of angels led by the archangel Michael. Lucifer and his angels were cast out of heaven and became evil spirits or demons. Then Satan tempted the woman Eve and caused her and her husband Adam to sin against God. Genesis chapter 3 verse 1 to 14. He told them that they could obtain the divinity of God and become like God through knowledge of good and evil. Due to Adam's rebellion, sin entered the world and passed it to all men, and with it came death and curse, and every human being becomes a sinner by birth. The fall of man enabled Satan to be the ruler of this world. See the Gospel of John chapter 12, verse 31. He is also called the God of this world. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 4. He controls all the evil and corrupt religious leaders, rulers, and kings of the world. They are mere puppets in his hands, and he can direct them to do his evil deeds. It is Satan who controls, through his demons, dangerous Islamic terrorist groups such as ISIS, Al Qaeda, Boko Haram, Al Shabaab, Taliban, Hamas, and Hezbollah. He makes them extremely evil and leads them to behead people they deem as infidels. When we see a video showing ISIS terrorists burning someone alive or beheading a defenseless victim, it is the demon that controlled and inspired them to commit such nefarious deeds. Despite this fact, Satan does not have absolute power over everything. God is still sovereign and in control, and Satan can do nothing without his knowledge and permission. See the book of Job. The loving and just God would not allow Satan to pick up anyone at random and turn him into his tool of destruction. We have seen in the case of his first pickup that the devil found a female brothel keeper, Semiramis, who engaged in immoral practices of selling her body to men and gaining income through engaging other women to do the same. He also discovered the first tyrant, Nimrod, who rebelled against God and established kingdom. Nimrod means we rebel. Along with those two, Satan formed his first evil trinity and created that mystery religion which made people worship him rather than God. Through that first religion, Satan causes the first joint human rebellion against God in the city of Babylon by building the Tower of Babel. At that time, all human beings spoke one language, most probably Hebrew. God confounded that language, made them all speak different languages, and scattered them all over the world. He did that because he wanted to cut down evil. Every group of people began to speak a language understood by them only. Therefore, divided it due to different language, the people went in all directions, carrying with them the seeds of their rebellion and the virus of that mystery religion. We saw the same pattern repeated in the case of the founder of Islam. Satan did not just choose an innocent Arab man living in the remote corner of the arid desert of Arabia and made him his false prophet, and through him he deceived and leveraged the deception of millions upon millions of human beings. The devil found an opportunist woman, Khadija, who engaged in all sorts of evil practices, sorcery, deception, selfish ambition, etc. Through those practices, she amassed wealth and became a merchant woman. Along with her, Satan also found an Arab man who was prepared to do anything to get what he wanted. Muhammad agreed to do everything his selfish wife required him to do for her. When she asked him to pretend to be a prophet, he did not object or refuse. He willingly joined the evil conspiracy and sold himself to Satan. The old man, Waraq ibn Nawfal, was another valuable and willing evil conspirator. Before joining the Satanic Trinity, he already joined 3 religious cults: Arab polytheism, the Aryan Christian cult, and the false Arab cult of Hanafiya, which its adherents claimed to be the followers of the religion of Abraham, who they believe to be the father of the Jewish and Arabs. Satan used those 3 Arabs who were already prepared for who were already prepared their hearts to do evil, and used them to create the most deadly religion he had ever created, Islam. The word Islam does not mean peace, but it means an absolute and unquestionable surrender to the will of Allah And by now we know who Allah is, the idol of the moon god. Remember, behind every false religion is an idol. Behind every idol is a demon. And behind every demon is Satan worshipped by proxy. And I do not need to remind you who Satan is, but in case you forgot, just read those biblical verses. The book of Ezekiel, chapter 28, verses 12 to 18. The book of Isaiah, chapter 14, verse 12 to 14. And the book of Revelation, chapter 12, verse 3 to 9. And ask God to guide you to the truth of Jesus Christ, who defeated Satan on the cross and offers to you his free gift of salvation. Although Satan rebelled and was cast out of heaven along with his fallen angels, he continues to rule this world through his puppet rulers and deceive the world with his false prophets. By creating false religions, he blinds people and makes them worship him rather than God. People worship him through idols, sacred objects, symbols, saints, and many other religious rituals. The Apostle Paul stated that behind every idol is a demon. See 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 19 to 20. In Psalms 96, verse 5, God said, "For all the gods of the nations are idols." This means that the God Allah, the moon god, whom the Muslim worship in the Black Kaaba in Mecca, is an idol, and behind that, Satan is worshipped by proxy. Every Muslim is required wherever he or she is to face the Black Kaaba, where the black stone, offer 5 prayers, and bow down to it 17 times in the day. By worshipping the idols of the Kaaba and its black stone, Muslims are worshipping the demons behind them. 1 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 4 to 6. Over 2 million Muslims go every year to Mecca city and perform their Hajj rituals and offer their animals sacrifices. They sacrifice to demons. See the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 32, verse 17 to 18. The Apostle Paul said, "The things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to devils and not to God." 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 19 to 20. Since the Bible clearly defines idolatry as the worship of demons, and since demons are personalities which desire the worship of human beings, it is fair to conclude the characterization of such deities as Zeus, Amun-Ra, Demeter, and Isis were simply the classical names attributed to specific fallen spirits. In other words, Apollo was a real personality. Osiris was a genuine underworld fiend. Hecate actually lived and still does. The Hindu gods, Shiva, and the 8-armed goddesses of death, Kali, are far more than man-made images. The images of the gods, falcon-headed statues, animal forms, provided a point of focus. Kali is even demonic looking and is depicted as holding a skull in one of her hands, quoting Carol Brooks' idol worship, spirits behind the idols. The city of Babylon is always associated with Satan's city, while Jerusalem is known as God's city. Satan was worshipped first at Babylon, and in that city he began his mystery religion. The book of Revelation shows that the Antichrist will be supported by the false prophet. He is going to lead Russia and Muslim countries to attack the Jews during the 7 years of tribulation. First, he will deceive the Jews by making a peace treaty with them. Then he will allow them to build their temple and offer sacrifices. After 2 years, he will break his treaty with them and start persecuting and killing them. Since Muslims are going to join the Antichrist in the attack against the Jewish, that means the teaching of Muhammad will be the main driving force. The same spirit that possessed Muhammad after the death of his first wife Khadija will possess the false prophet who will support the Antichrist in his attempt to annihilate the Jewish. Of course, the Holy Bible shows that Christ will descend from heaven with his army of true Christian believers, those who died and went to be with the Lord, and those who were caught up during the rapture. The Jews will accept Jesus as their Lord and Savior. Then Christ and his army will meet the Antichrist and his army of Russians and Muslims and defeat them at the Battle of Armageddon. After his defeat, the Antichrist and the false prophet will be cast into the lake of fire, where they will be tormented day and night forever and ever with their followers among demons and humans. Now, who is that false prophet who is going to stand with the Antichrist? The false prophet of the end times is described in the book of Revelation, chapter 13, verse 11 to 15. He is also called the second beast, Revelation, chapter 16, verse 13, chapter 19, verse 20, and chapter 20, verse 10. Together with the Antichrist and the false prophet, Satan will possess them both. This is the third evil trinity in human history. The first evil trinity was Semiramis and Nimrod, and both possessed by the devil. The second evil trinity was Khadija, Muhammad, and Satan. Since the book of Revelation indicates that the army of the Antichrist will be mainly made up of Russia and Muslim countries such as Iran, Turkey, Libya, Sudan, and all other Arab countries, it stands to reason that the false prophet must also be a Muslim leader possessed by the same spirit that controlled Muhammad during his lifetime and inspired him to revive that abominable Babylonian mystery religion. Someone has the spirit of Muhammad, a spirit of violence, lust, hatred. Someone like Ayatollah Khomeini, Osama bin Laden, and Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. The same argument can be used to show that the Antichrist will be a Muslim too. The same evil trinity of Semiramis, Nimrod, and Satan, which created the mystery religion of Babylon, was repeated as Khadija, Muhammad, and Satan, and brought about Islam. Likewise, a similar evil trinity will join hands in the future as the Antichrist, the false prophet, and Satan, and cause the 7 years of the tribulation. The Antichrist will be joined by Russia and all Muslim countries and gather at the valley of Jehoshaphat to be engaged in the battle of Armageddon against Christ and his army. See the book of Revelation, chapter 16, verse 16. We have stated earlier what will be the outcome of that battle and what will take place immediately after it. The 1,000 year Christ reign on earth, the millennium. I would like to conclude this article by stating an important warning. We know that Islam has been created by Satan to oppose the will of God, to persecute the people of God, Jews and Christians, to destroy other human beings, Hindus, Buddhists, Sikhs, and atheists. Likewise, kill the so-called hypocrite Muslims and apostates. But we should never treat Muslims as our enemies and seek their destruction or annihilation. The Holy Bible tells us our real enemies are not humans, but Satan and his evil spirit. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. The epistle of the Apostle Paul to the Ephesians, chapter 6, verse 12. Accordingly, our real struggle and fight are against these evil spirits that empower Muslims and causes them to commit all kinds of atrocities against non-Muslims and their fellow Muslims. As true believers in God, our primary weapons of warfare are not machine guns, jet fighters, rockets, tanks, submarines, automatic bombs, and nuclear weapons, but our prayers and the word of God. See 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 2 to 3. By emphasizing the priority by emphasizing the priority of spiritual warfare, I do not mean to say that the Jews and Christians should be pacifists and inactive and never engage themselves in self-defense against Muslim terrorists. We need to guard our countries, our children, and ourselves against any imminent or a potential terrorist threats. Terror and terrorists must be pursued militarily and destroyed wherever they exist. About the writer of this article, Dr. A. Ahmed is an author and scholar. He holds 5 university degrees, BA, MA, and doctorate in philosophy and comparative studies of religion from India, and partial and master degrees in religious studies and philosophy from Canada. He was born and raised a Muslim, but through his studies of philosophy and comparative studies of religions, he converted to Christianity. He has a unique writing style that can break through any religious, social, and cultural barriers and reveal the truth as it is. In addition, his books rely on an eyewitness because he witnessed with his own eyes the dire, difficult conditions that Muslim women lived in. He has written 25 books but has so far published 10 of them. He wrote his novels in English and translated them into Arabic. All of his books revolve around women's issue in Islamic societies and terrorism in Islam. His books are free to listen to on his pages on the YouTube website, and he narrates them in his voice.